This is episode 57 of the After Gambling podcast. In this episode, we are going to explore using online tools to learn more about ourselves. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the After Gambling podcast. My name is Jamie. I'm a former compulsive gambler. Now I'm a non-gambler. And the last time I gambled was July 15th of 2010. For those of you that have been following along, you noticed a little bit of a change there, terminology to non-gambler. It's something I picked up after reading the Alan Carr Easy Way to Quit Gambling, which I highly, highly recommend. It's something that I wish I would have picked up actually a long time ago, many, many years ago. So if you haven't already, definitely go check out that book. It's excellent. And in that book, I was introduced to the term non-gambler. And as I've been kind of wrestling with what to call myself now, non-gambler is really kind of one of the things. As I said, I'm also a former compulsive gambler. I'll always be that former, but it just didn't feel right to say that I am a compulsive gambler anymore, because it's like saying that you're overweight when you're no longer overweight. That's something that's still in me. I still could go back there. I could choose to get back on that path and go right back to that. So I keep that front and center, and it doesn't change anything that I do in recovery. But it just feels a whole lot more appropriate to call myself a non-gambler and a former compulsive gambler. Those two things just seem to fit. So that's what I'm going with. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, as I said in the intro, today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about using tools online, and namely surveys or personality questionnaires, in order to help us learn more about ourselves. Now, this idea comes on the back of my participation in a study on compulsive gamblers. And I took part in the study. I will do anything to kind of help, obviously. I mean, I do this podcast, and so when I saw that there was a study, I volunteered myself for the study, and it was really good. And there was kind of an interview process up front, and then there was a questionnaire afterwards. And both were good, but the questionnaire online was really, really solid. And I really got a lot out of it. And as I was going through it, and we'll kind of highlight some of the things that I learned about myself in doing it, and there are things that I already probably knew on some level, but answering the questions kind of allowed me to think about that again. But yeah, doing this survey was just kind of really eye-opening. It was just a really good experience for me. Now, before we get into some of the takeaways that I had, there's one other thing I want to mention, which is I was recently listening to one of my other favorite podcasts to listen to, which is the Jordan Harbinger show. Jordan Harbinger, if you want to go check that out. Jordan has an awesome show. It's a lot of personal development, but he really does focus just on learning, and there's application to his stuff. It's not just trying to get you pumped up and get you excited and all that type of stuff. And he covered that in a recent episode, talking about why does self-help make us feel so crappy sometimes. And I know this is something that I've experienced, and you've probably experienced. And so obviously, as somebody that works in kind of that self-help field in this podcast, it was something I'm glad I listened to. And it's something I think we all need to be mindful of, is making sure that the self-help that we're looking into isn't making us feel worse, because that's not what it should be. And hopefully, in listening to this, things have only gotten better for your life. But the one thing that they pointed out, and which I want to point out before we get into the kind of the surveys and what I learned from the surveys, is self-help is just that. It should be for self-help. And one key thing and place that I know I've gotten in trouble with in the past, and I think others do as well, and they point out in the show, was that we need to realize that we're never going to be finished. We're never going to be perfect or complete. I mean, that is the big myth that many times people try to sell you with self-help. They're trying to sell you that belief that buying a book or listening to a podcast or watching a video, whatever they are offering, maybe it's taking a course, they're trying to sell you that on the other side of whatever they're offering, you're going to be perfect. You're going to fix all your flaws. You're going to be complete. And then you can go on living this wonderful life that is free of any problems. And it kind of falls in line with Mark Manson in his book, Subtle Art of Not Giving a. It just reiterates that life isn't perfect. We're never perfect. We're never complete. And that's part of life and the journey, is to just kind of continuously learn about ourselves and grow, but knowing up front that we shouldn't hold ourselves to some unattainable standard of perfection, is a good way to keep us from falling into that trap of having self-help make us feel worse. Because that's really what happens, right? Is we start to work on ourselves and we're trying to get to this level of perfection. And then when we don't, when we get to the other side and it's just real life, which is what is reality, then we're disappointed. We're disappointed in ourselves. We're like, man, that self-help really sucked. So I think just reframing it, understanding that, look, it's good to work on yourselves. It's good to try and become a better person, a better husband, a better father, a better whatever you are in life. But know that it's a myth if you're looking at that piece as the missing piece to the puzzle to get you to a point where everything's perfect. So yeah, go check out that episode that Jordan just did. It was really good. And check out all his content. It's solid stuff. Gives you a nice hour-long deep dive podcast with application at the end that really is something that I've gotten a lot of value and I know you will as well. So now diving into today's episode, as I mentioned, I recently took part in a study, and the second half of it was an online questionnaire. You know, the type they strongly agree, strongly disagree, and all these different questions asking you about habits or beliefs or emotions, and very similar, I would say, to a personality test. If you've ever done kind of one of those online personality tests, figuring out your love language, figuring out what makes you tick, there are all these different surveys that we can take online to learn more about ourselves. I remember there was one, How to Fascinate. It was an interesting one that I used once in business, and it kind of tries to dive in and figure out your personality type and what's really good and what you should emphasize more about yourself and the dangers. All of these studies, again, are just in an attempt to learn more about ourselves. It's not to become this perfect person, but it's interesting to take these different quizzes or evaluations, and not only to see what's in the results, because I think most of them, they do give you some result at the end, but I don't even think it's about the results. And that's what today's episode is about, the things that I took out of just taking this survey. Because as you're going through and you're answering these questions, you have to reflect on things. And there were questions, and I tried not to dive into the why are people asking this? Why are they asking me this specific question? I tried to just answer the question. But as I did it, a few things popped up. First of all, there were a lot of questions about, okay, when you were having struggles, did you turn to a friend or a family member? And did you feel like you had this support system? And it was interesting. As I answered the questions, the answers were always yes. I had this huge support system around me. I felt like I had people that loved me. I felt like I had people that cared and that wanted the best for me. But then each of the questions that kind of focused on I would feel comfortable going to them and talking to them about the problem, or I did that, I had to answer no. And so that was interesting. And there were some other questions in there, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a golfer. I'm this independent person in so many ways. So when I have emotional problems, I tend to do the same thing. But like I say, in taking the survey, it was really kind of clear to me when these questions came up, it just kind of triggered this thought in my mind, which is, yeah, Jamie, that's something that you do and you need to work on. You do try to handle all your problems yourself. You don't rely on this network that you have around you. So that was one of the first takeaways, was just kind of that I see that I had this support system, and you probably are in the same situation. You have these people around you that really love you, care about you, want you to do well, but we don't use them. So as I said, that was one obvious thing that stood out as I was taking this survey and filling out this questionnaire, was that I am often reliant on myself. I don't use the resources around me, and that's something that I need to work on going forward. The other questions that were kind of scattered throughout, but that I started to see a theme, was around tasks and finishing tasks. And I'm definitely a person that is very loyal, very committed. I mean, I like to see something through to the end. I don't like unfinished business. And there were some questions about that. And unfinished business definitely bothers me. Unfinished tasks definitely bother me. But then I get in this situation, I definitely had it when I was gambling, was that I'd push off tasks. I'd push them off. And so they'd start to gain that weight, that stress on me. And so I had these two opposing things. I had this internal desire to finish tasks because I didn't like having things unfinished. I didn't like seeing something through to the end. I definitely like to kind of complete the job and have somebody be happy about it. And that's probably another thing, is that I'm a people pleaser. So when you aren't finishing a task, you're upsetting someone. So I do like to finish them. But then internally, anytime I didn't finish a task, I left something undone, it just sat there and it just worked on me, worked on me, and worked on me. And then it started to play on kind of my beating myself up over these unfinished tasks. And it's very similar to kind of, we've talked about before, you have this persona that you want to live up to. Maybe it's even what we talked about at the intro to this show, that we have this vision of perfection for ourselves. And so anytime we fall short, it tends to be kind of a negative. It tends to kind of pull us down emotionally. And that's something I sort of realized in this test, was having these unfinished things, or things in my life that I don't feel like I've seen through to the end, or to the point that I want to see them through. Those really wear on me. And as they wear on me, then I wear on myself because I'm wearing on myself, if that makes any sense. I'm upset that I haven't finished them. So it's kind of, I get into that mode where I'm just frustrated with myself for not finishing them. And then this was a third thing that I noticed, which is when I get frustrated with myself, I just tend to shut down. And this was definitely the emotional escape for me when I was gambling. I had these other situations in my life which were really hard and difficult, and I was frustrated that I wasn't able to solve this difficult, hard task. And some of them were probably easy tasks, but it frustrated me. And when I got frustrated, my default is to shut down, is to feel like I can't get anything done. And I tend to lose focus. I tend to get stressed. And I just tend to obsess on the fact that I am not getting something done, which in the end just makes things worse because you're not taking the action to move forward. So it was really, like I say, eye-opening. It was something that I've known about, I've thought about, but taking this test was really, really good because it just kind of sat there right in front of my face. And as I had to answer these questions, I'm like, wait a second, that's connected to this, and this is connected to this emotion. And so with each question, I started to learn more about myself. And a lot of it was a lot of good stuff. I saw a lot of my good traits. And in fact, 98% of it, I think I'm pretty happy with. It's just that little 2% that I'm like, man, this is an area that I didn't realize, but I need to improve on. And then the final thing that I noticed, there were a lot of questions in this about new adventures or risks. And I'm definitely a person, I love new adventure, but I'm also pretty cautious. I'm pretty calculated. I like to think things through. I don't just dive in. I'm very calculated in that regard. And so it kind of plays into their different personalities and different types of gambling people are drawn to. Mine was definitely the escapism. I'm not a thrill seeker. I guess I would love to jump out of an airplane, but I don't want to learn how to ride a motorcycle. Probably two conflicting things. One is just kind of that quick thrill. The other one is a long-term exposure to risk, which I am not interested in. So it was just interesting to kind of answer these questions. And I've always thought of myself as a bit of a risk taker, but really, I'm actually quite calculated. I'm actually quite reserved and measured in almost everything I do. I like these spontaneous things. I like to be spontaneous. I like to go on long hikes. I'd love to go out into the woods for a 3 or 4 hour hike. But that's different than these long-term exposure risks. So it was just, again, something that was interesting. I learned about myself, kind of went against some of the things that I maybe thought I was. And I think that's cool. I think that's interesting. I think it's a way to grow, a way to improve by identifying things that maybe aren't as good as you'd like them to be. But again, I didn't dwell on it. I don't think that I'm an incomplete person. I'm a failure. It's not this measure of perfection anymore. It's just, hey, that's an area that I could probably do better on. So what's your takeaway today? First, if there's opportunities to get involved in a gambling study, I would highly encourage you to do it. It will help you personally, but then you're also paying it forward. You're doing something that takes your lived experience and shares it with another person, a researcher, who's trying to figure out a way to help, a way to identify the traits or the habits or the emotions, whatever it may be, in order to help somebody else in the future. I think that's all what we all want, is to help someone else avoid the similar stress and anxiety and misery that we experienced. So definitely seek out any surveys, get involved if you want to take part in them. Feel free to reach out to me, email me, jamie@aftergambling.com. I can kind of connect you to some of the people that I know are doing research. Then the other one is if you want to do this anonymously and start off anonymously, do a Google search. Look for some personality tests. Learn about your personality. Learn about your love language. Learn about all those different things. Take all those online tests, but don't take them to find out a result. Take them because the questions they ask are going to trigger new thoughts, new ideas in your mind, and they're going to allow you to have some reflection as you go. And as you answer the question, say, okay, why is that? Or some things might stick out and be like, oh yeah, I do that. I didn't notice that. Maybe you get to the end and you don't even hit submit because we're not after that end goal. We're not after the evaluation at the end. We don't want to know where we stack up compared to perfect. What we want to know is what are some things that we can work on. And I think taking these online personality tests might be a great way to really kind of have on your own time some deep self-exploration into your personality, your emotions, your habits, all those things that you want to learn and grow in recovery, and just as a human to be a better whatever it is you are in life. So I just wanted to share this experience because it really did have some very profound and impactful takeaways for me personally, and I think that you can do the same. And like I say, find some quizzes. I'll try and find some, and I'll be posting some of those, and I'll try to add those in on the website or on Twitter if I find one that's really good. But again, I don't think there's one that's perfect. I just think take them, see what the questions are, and then reflect on why you're answering the way you are. But all the while, make sure that you're reminding yourself you're not doing this to become this perfect person, because a perfect person doesn't exist. We're all flawed. All we can do is just try to improve and become a little bit better version of ourselves. And if we do that, then self-help is something that's productive. It's not holding ourselves up to this unattainable goal of perfection. So that's going to be it for this episode. Thanks again for listening. As always, reach out to a therapist. That's another great place. Therapy. If you want to do this is live with another person, that's what the therapist does. Is it's almost like these online personality tests, but they're doing it just for you, and they're asking questions, and they're adjusting on the fly to help you dig in and explore your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, all those types of things. So definitely reach out to a therapist. In addition to therapy, reach out to doctors. If you have financial issues, reach out to lawyers, attorneys, financial people. Get professional help. You've heard this a million times, but there are people out there that want to help you, that have your best interest in mind, and leaning on them will help you in recovery. And finally, the music for the show is Something Elated by Broke for Free and is licensed under the Creative Commons license. My name is Jamie. I'm a non-gambler, former compulsive gambler. I haven't gambled since July 15th of 2010. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.